What's the most horrifying or disrespectful thing a guest has done in your home? Had a friend come over for a weekend thing to celebrate my 6th month of sobriety. He brought his girlfriend, who brought her cocker spaniel, who proceeded to crap on my couch, and not a solid crap either. I'm talking that thick, cake batter diarrhea they get from cheap off-brand dog food. And she just looked at me, pinching her nose, and said snottily, "Aren't you going to like clean that up?" My friend looked at her, she just had a xenomorph chest burst to live up to its name right there in the room. Got up, grabbed some paper towels, and cleaned it while apologizing to me repeatedly. He dumped her the next day because the same thing happened at his parents' house. She was a bitch. Someone at a party dumped a cup of alcohol in my fish tank because your fish looked bored. Ha ha ha. I kicked everyone out and had to change out all the water before they died. My wife and I were having my high school friends over for some hanging out when our twins were 4 months old. For those without kids, the first few months with a newborn are brutal because you're sleep deprived, having a constant mental battle of I should sleep versus I should clean / be productive / be social, etc. And it's even worse with multiples. So, needless to say, we put on our happy faces, made the house presentable, though not pristine, and opened the door. My friend's wife walked in and immediately says, "Wow, it's not very neat in here. Couldn't you have cleaned?" I'm fairly certain my wife almost committed a crime that day. A co-worker of my husband's just walked in our back door one night and had the gall to call me a bitch when I told him I was going to call the cops if he didn't leave. Apparently, he thought it would be fine to just walk in because your husband knows I'm coming over. Why are you freaking out? I'd never met this guy. Our kid was asleep, and my husband, who wasn't supposed to be home from work for a couple more hours, hadn't texted me that dude was coming over. Of course I'm going to freak out. My sister-in-law got really wasted and crap on my coffee table during an argument. I used to host extravagant yearly parties at my house as a thank you to everyone who worked for me. Significant others were fine, but I stressed that young kids were not welcome because it was an adult party and the house / garden just weren't child friendly. One of the guests, who's a mother, decided to bring her 4 children anyway, all under the age of 12, and leave them completely unattended. I walked into my master bedroom halfway through to find they had filled a dirt hole in the garden with water from a hose, made goopy mud pies, stomped around in them, come back inside, and crawled into my bed under the covers, and ground their shoes intentionally into my pillow and all the bedding. They also took all the clothes out of my closet, put them on, threw them on the floor, and stepped on those, and ruined 2 rugs on the way. The mom's response, "Haha, well, that's just how kids are, you know. You'll understand once you decide to finally grow up and have some." Yes, she worked for me. This was about 4 years ago. No, I could not uninvite or fire her. HR/legal were afraid that by explicitly marketing it as a work team event on company time, but provided the venue and food/drink myself, I had created a gray area as to whether this was a work or private function, and whether that meant any one person could be excluded or disciplined on what grounds. More specifically, should they be, given the message it would send and the drama it would cause. Given this employee had a many-year history that predated me of threatening legal action on gender/mother discrimination grounds anytime she felt excluded, HR/legal advised me to back off. Given the damage ended up being minor, I dropped it, but it was the last year I had one of those parties. Roommate's boyfriend comes over wasted. Roommate was not there, but he said he wanted to wait for her, and we were too non-confrontational to make him leave. After a while, he goes into the bathroom and we can hear lots of splashing around, but again, too timid to ask WTF is going on in there. He comes out, sits down, and we notice his arms are completely covered in black marker. Then he says, "You might want to clean up the bathroom. There is water all over in there," and leaves. He had taken a freaking black Sharpie, colored his arms, then tried cleaning it off, and when it wouldn't come off he got the marker wet and splashed black Sharpie water all over the entire bathroom. There were puddles of purple Sharpie water all over the floor. It stained the linoleum, man. Despite our roommate's attempts to clean it up, we ended up losing security deposit money over it. He was no longer allowed over without her there to answer some concerns about us still letting him come over. This happened like 20 years ago. We were freaking 19 years old. This was just a summer sublet, not a long-term roommate. So it wasn't worth the fight to outright ban him. I'm sure y'all would have been super tough had it happened to you. If it makes you feel better, we were all very passive aggressive to him for the rest of the summer. My mother-in-law is the worst. The absolute rudest person you'd ever meet in your life. Anyone that's met her will agree. She took a piece of birthday cake from my 3 years old before we sang happy birthday, blew out candles, and cut the cake. I didn't notice until we went to sing happy birthday, and not only was cake missing, his brother was. She was sitting with my other son spoon feeding him. Once she mocked my parents on Easter by waving her hands over baskets saying, "Look at me, I'm blessing the food, and I'm not a priest." She stood outside our house in the snow when we said grace on Christmas and made a big point that she born again Christian self didn't approve. She picked my son, the middle kid, that she has an unhealthy obsession with, up from preschool, and took him to her home in another city, causing him to miss out on his sister's event at school. She was winning an award and the dinner to celebrate after. She also told him if he touched his peen he would go to hell. We didn't find out for ages because she made him promise not to tell, causing months visiting a urologist and therapist to get his urine to flow properly in his body. He was holding it in, wetting the bed, getting infections, and his urine started to go backwards in his body. She took Christmas ornaments and Mother's Day gifts he made for me saying that she should be his mom, not me. She also gave him a gift signed "Your real mom in heaven," so we had to tell him he was adopted at a far younger age than we planned. She tried to make plans with my oldest 2 children behind our backs. I overheard her telling my husband that she didn't want to take the R word with her. The youngest has special needs. At that point I walked in and said, "There's a door here and a door there. Get the frick out and don't come back." We had to put her on a list at school for people that cannot have contact with the children, nor pick them up and contact the city, because she would come over and go through our garbage. Note: regarding school, my husband listed her as an in case of emergency contact person. While we could take her off the list, and we did, we could not press charges against her or school, but we did remove him. We did cut her off in between parties and holidays after every rude comment, cutting her off for good when we found out, after we cut her off from my son in therapy, the fear she instilled in our child, because if it affected his physical health, WTF did she do to his mental health? My husband has been on my side through everything. She wasn't as nuts when he grew up with her, just mean, and his father was alive, so her true colors weren't exposed until after he passed. This list is just what came to mind, and it occurred over a span of years, and it's been years since we've seen her. We've considered moving, and just might. I was out shopping with the boys and we saw her. About a year ago, she smartly ran out the door so fast when she saw me look her direction. Wake up in the middle of the night, hobble to what he thought was the bathroom he was trashed, and then start pissing against the wall/hallway floor. I woke up to the sound of a very heavy stream and then my mom shouting, "What the frick?" After my mother's funeral, we had a luncheon back at my parents' house. It wasn't a large house, but it was spacious, and the 100 people in attendance were spread through the dining room, kitchen, living room, and outside patio area. I was in the garage with my best friend, drinking alcohol to try and fortify myself when I felt my 17-year-old neighbor crank up his ridiculously loud car radio. The entire house was vibrating, and I completely spazzed. I would have killed him, but my cousin stopped me and said he would handle it. He walked over to the guy and told him what was going on, and politely asked him to turn it off. The kid cussed him out and proceeded to turn it up even louder. So I decided to call the cops, since any other course would have involved fire, assault with a deadly weapon, and a lengthy prison term. Grief can make you pretty crazy. I went upstairs to use the phone located in my parents' room. As I opened the door, I found my aunt, mother's sister, rummaging through my mother's things. When I demanded to know WTF she was doing, she replied that she just wanted to take something to remember her sister. I told her to get fo. and that if my father had found her doing that, he would have thrown her out the window. A beast of a relative came over with his new wife, who apparently hated dogs, but didn't warn us or ask us to move us into another room. Our jolly, obese bitchin' fries was just walking around smelling people's legs, not even jumping up, and he kicked my poor dog with no warning. I still haven't gotten over it, and I still don't like him. A stranger decided he would come on my futon at my college house. One of my ex's douche buddies brought over this horrible girl he just started dating. I have a good amount of cats, and they are all insanely friendly. My old man kitty, Buddy, jumped up on the armrest of the couch she was sitting on to check out the newcomer and get some pets. Without missing a beat, she shoved him hard to the floor and made a loud "uck" sound. I stood right up, pointed to the door, and sternly said, "He lives here, you don't leave." Probably not as bad as most here, but it infuriated me. She was never allowed back. When I was younger, our landlord used to come by a little too often to check up on us. I remember I would get so frustrated because he would act as if the house was his, even though he had legal ownership of it. He'd put his bare ass feet on the couch and would ask me to get him snacks from our kitchen. I wish I was older then, so I cold kicked him in his stupid throat. I was dating this woman for about a month, invited her to a party at my house, and she got pretty wasted. She went to the bathroom, used my toothbrush, and told me she was going to lay down. I looked her in the eye, really looked at her, and said, "Are you going to puke? If so, I'll get you a bucket." "No, I'm fine." Cue an hour later, to find my bed and floor covered. To her credit, she was apologetic the next day, and cleaned it up. We have been married for about 1 year now. Things are going great. Cousins were visiting, and one of them used the bathroom. Somehow managed to get some poop on his hand. Wash it off in the sink. "No, I'll just wipe it on the window." So someone comes in later and sees a brown smear. Kid was 14. I hired a 17-year-old family friend to help with some yard work. She was a good student, nice person, and a hard worker. While we were trimming a hedge, she asked if she could use the bathroom. I showed her where it was, went back outside, and continued to work. She took a while, and I worried she wasn't feeling well. Eventually she came back out and appeared to be fine. I didn't give it another thought. We finished up the work, and I drove her home. When I returned, I headed into the bathroom to shower, and was met with my worst nightmare. There was crap everywhere. There were nuggets, chunks of freaking con, and crap pudding fingerprints everywhere. Walls, floor, toilet, shower curtain, towels, cabinet, mirror. She was thorough. Nothing, save the ceiling, had been missed by this Picasso. Incredulous, disgusted, angry, and perplexed don't even scratch the surface of the emotional tsunami I felt. It took hours to clean and sanitize the mess she made, and I still feel resentful 20 years later. I never said anything to her. I didn't know how to broach the topic. Her brother was terminally ill and in the hospital. Her dad was mean. The family was very poor, and I knew she was under a tremendous amount of stress. I just kept my distance and never invited her to my house again. Not a guest, but a roommate. He once kicked the door open to our shared bathroom and destroyed the door jamb. I came back to find this after a weekend away with my so. He admits to it and says not to worry, he was going to fix it. He spends the next week sitting around smoking weed and pounding 40s. Being fed up with not having a bathroom that locks for my GF. One female in a house of 5 dudes. I go to the hardware store and buy all the materials. While I'm hammering the splintered door jamb back together, the culprit is sitting on his ass smoking weed and freaking around with some Call of Duty game. When I finish, I hand him a bill and tell him he has 2 weeks to pay it. He cried in my doorway for like 30 minutes begging me to not charge him, and claimed that it wasn't valid because he was going to fix it. Charged him $20 an hour for my labor, and material cost only came to about $60. He paid when I told the landlord to threaten to evict his ass. I have come to confess, I was the horrifying guest. This happened at the house of my mum's friend. I was around 8 years old and came across a bidet for the first time, and I shat in it thinking it was a kid's toilet, and it flooded the bathroom and collapsed the floor, pouring water below into newly refurbished living room. My mum and Jeannie didn't remain friends long after that. I'm so freaking sorry, Jeannie. I threw a party in high school. Everything had gone surprisingly well. There were the remnants you'd expect, but nothing major was broken or anything. Around 3 AM everyone was either asleep or had gone home, and I was on my back porch smoking with my friend. One of my friends had been particularly wasted and was sleeping on a couch when all of a sudden he stumbled onto the porch and punched my dad's bird feeder off the porch into the yard, where it shattered into about 7 pieces. My parents don't like dogs in our house. My dad loves animals, but not enough to have one as a pet or let them in our house. A couple friend of his always brought their dog in. They let the dog pee in our house. Never cleaned it. Never offered to clean it. Also, when I was younger, the husband would boss me around telling me to get him stuff my parents never offered him. Not my house. But while at a sleepover, when we were kids, one of my friends decided to engrave his name into a glass dining table. Oh, I have one. Night 2017. A male friend from out of town asked to stay in my spare bedroom with his new girlfriend. No problem for me, as I have 3 spares. We party as a group at a local bar and Uber home separately. I go to bed alone, and as I'm passing by his room I hear him and his girlfriend talking in their room. I needed to pee and take my contacts out, so I opened the door to the bathroom, only to find a stark naked woman drinking water, holding onto the sink for dear life. I simply shut the door and went into my room. I realized she was the woman he had a one-night stand with 2 weeks prior, in that spare bedroom. She finishes her water and marches into their bedroom. They end up having the noisiest threesome I have ever heard. To be fair, it was the only threesome I have ever heard. To make matters worse, they tell me in the morning the bed is broken. The 3 of them thrusted the wooden bed frame to pieces. It is June and I'm still gorilla gluing planks together. We let a friend stay with us when he got out of the Navy until he got back on his feet. It was supposed to only be for a few weeks, but then it turned into several months. He tripled our electric bill and doubled our water bill within 2 weeks, and he didn't start paying me until nearly a month and a half into him staying with us. He would help around the house for the first 2 weeks and then just stopped. He would go through weird phases where every few weeks he would decide to try weird lifestyle trend, get excited about the changes, revert, get depressed, start again. He would go party with a few people who often would take advantage of him since he's really attractive. Then he would come home and blame me, not even kidding. One of his other female friends forcibly made out with him, and he came home and yelled at me and told me that my gender just takes advantage of people like him. My daughter wasn't even a year yet, and he would just randomly invite people over to spend the night without contacting us first. I would get up for work at 4 and get my kid ready for daycare, and there would be wasted people I didn't know passed out all over living room. He used to watch raunchy and trashy shows with scenes that could pass for softcore 30 in the living room while our daughter was in the room. Used to show her weird videos on YouTube that looked like cute kid cartoons but had creepy dubs. When we told him to stop doing that, he got mad and said, "But it's not like she would remember it anyways." He once fed her a protein bar because she was fixated on its gold wrapper and got mad at me for getting mad at him. His reasoning was that one time I said that she didn't like eating meat and somehow that meant that she needed protein, and so he was just doing me a favor. It hit a crescendo when one day he decided he was going to try and stay up for 36 hours. He made himself a pot of coffee on the stove, even though we have a Keurig, went to his room and passed out. The coffee boiled into this black tar and smoked up the entire house. I woke up at 3 in the morning to the smell. I called him out on it, since my daughter's room was right next to the kitchen and could have hurt her. Not that a fire cold started, but it's the principle of the matter. He apologized, but then he did the same crap the next day. I wound up kicking him out that week and our friendship ended then and there. On top of that, he told everyone what happened, but failed to mention the coffee incident, so I opened Facebook to see huge rants about how much of a bitch I was. We had some relatives with really poor control of their kid over for a week. We didn't have enough bedrooms, So their kid stayed in my room, and I slept on the couch. In the time they were staying, that kid managed to break the door to my bedroom, break my Xbox 360, scratch the new paint off the wall next to my bed, leaving a huge white blotch in an otherwise blue wall, break the railing on our stairs, after trying to climb them, break most of my Lego sets, and lose some of the most vital pieces. I love my family, but no one is staying in my room ever again. My mom's ex-friend walked into our house and the very first thing she said was, "Ugh, that painting is so ugly. Why would you even buy that? It's an impressionistic painting of a horse, and it's just really simple but pretty. Fine. You don't like it. But why say it? And especially like that." She was a pretty terrible friend to my mom. Luckily she cut ties with her not long after. Having a party where people are crashing for the night for safety and convenience sake. Friend of a friend is meeting him at my place, and I was unaware. Doorbell rings at like 3 in the morning, and I answer the door like WTF. "Hey, I'm here for John." "I'm sorry, who are you?" John comes to the door. "Yo, is this guy gonna let us in, or what?" "John." I almost slammed the door in their freaking face. "Move in." We had a horrible roommate for 6 months and she just let her friend move into her room for 2 months without informing anyone. Her friend was using the fire escape to come and go. She would use the bathroom and shower only late at night. For a few weeks we just thought she was visiting often until one day I saw her half naked in the kitchen making eggs while I was homesick. By the time we all figured it out, it was too late to really do anything about it. We were terrified our crazy roommate would kill the cat or let the cat out or set our clothes on fire. Really, she was insane. We had 2 futons in our common space in one of my college dorm rooms. We woke up one morning to leave for breakfast, walked through the common room, and noticed that both futons had giant wet spots on them. Someone came into our room and peed on both futons. We had one shady ass roommate who we all suspected, but we don't know for sure. Were there 2 of them? Did one person pee one futon then move to the other and also pee there? The world may never know. Some idiot stole a knitted cap I made for my then boyfriend when she came over to drink our roommate's liquor. It had Ongzaro on it, and I made that Motherfrica, and if I ever see this thieving hoe again, she is getting 5 across the eyes. I don't care how many years ago it was. Had friends over one time and there was one lad who got incredibly wasted. He disappeared to the toilet, but we didn't really notice for about an hour he hadn't returned. I went to the bathroom to check on him. He didn't answer the door when I knocked to check on him. I opened the door and found him asleep on the toilet, pants down. So I woke him and left him to sort himself out. 5 minutes later, he entered my living room, pants still down, crap up his back, rolling turd all on my newly wallpapered wall. The proceeded to collapse on my couch. The wife was mortified. I was creased in laughter. Not my house, but a family member's. One of my cousins had a girlfriend in high school. She was over visiting and used the restroom. A few days later my aunt was cleaning the restroom and found a used tampon underneath the sink. Like not even wrapped, just kind thrown towards the back. They have a daughter, but at the time she was maybe 4 or 5 years old. Not as bad as other things in this thread, but some of my friends have no issues just going through my crap. I enjoy my privacy, so it's pretty irritating. When my brothers and I were children, a family member and her friend visited from Ireland. She was my mum's cousin's daughter, which makes her my second cousin once removed, I think. Anyway, I was maybe 7 at most. My brother's 5 and 4 years old. She and her friend were 17, 18. My parents ordered Chinese for themselves and the 2 teenagers, expensive for them, but they wanted to treat the guests well, and cooked fish fingers and chips for us children. While they were waiting for the Chinese to arrive, my cousin and her friend decided they were hungry now and ate our fish fingers. They didn't ask, nor did they tell my parents they'd done it till my mum pulled out a baking tray with nothing on it. The Chinese food turned up less than 10 minutes later. Had the extended family over at our house for Thanksgiving. After the meal was finished, we were all hanging out when one of my kids comes to tell me there's water coming out of the ceiling downstairs. My sister's kid had crammed an entire roll of toilet paper in the upstairs toilet. then flushed and let it fill the bathroom with toilet water until it finally soaked through and started pouring out underneath. My sister and her husband see this mess and immediately make hasty goodbyes and leave. I didn't even know it was their kid that had done it until after they were gone, and my parents told me her kid had a history of doing this. Spent my Thanksgiving evening cleaning up crap water and getting the drywall in my house ruined. Roommate invited some friends over. They all proceed to get rip-roaringly smashed on hard liquor. One of the friends strips down to underwear and her bra, pushes open the door to my room and immediately rips back the covers on my bed and hunkers down in there. I watch in horror from my desk. Proceed to yell at roommate and remaining friend to get this dumb wasted bitch out of my room or else I'm smacking her awake with a shoe. They managed to drag her out and away. I learned that the girl in my bed also had her period and didn't wear pads or tampons. I took off all my blankets and sheets, slapped on a fresh sheet, and washed that crap on hot water the next day. That was pretty disrespectful in my mind. Friend of mine had a small get together. Not a raging party, just a few folks hanging out kinda thing. 2 people fricked in his bathroom. Then the debate started of whether or not it was a disrespectful thing to do. He and I are on the side of it's the only room with a floor drain in it. It doesn't get more respectful than that, while others disagree. No one has definitively settled this debate. My ex out of the blue told my parents to be quiet in their own living room while they were discussing hospital arrangements for my elder sister's surgery so she could watch TV. She was an ultra idiot. Not my home exactly, but when I was at uni we had a flat with 5 rooms. 4 of us knew each other and 1 new person. She seemed okay at first, polite, friendly, then her friend started staying, which was fine. Until her friend started bringing guys back to our flat. Literally walked in on this girl on our kitchen table a couple times with different guys. The worst was when she used one of the toilets to do the deed, leaving bloody/jizzy stains all over it. We were all on the same course with early morning lectures, and it was always at the time we were getting ready that this friend would choose to take an hour-long shower in our single shower. So we couldn't when we had to go to class and she just had to hang around all day. I hadn't planned on writing this much. Turns out this made me a lot angrier than I first realized. This happened to a neighbor of mine that lived in the apartment below me. She invited a few acquaintances over to smoke weed. A girl in the group of acquaintances accused my neighbor, the host, of stealing her purse. She had left it in her car and freaked out and called the police. The police came and my neighbor got a ticket for possession of marijuana. I believe my neighbor was the only one charged since the weed was found in her home. It's decriminalized in my state, but she had to go through a 2-day anti-drug class and pay for court costs, which was around $400. Allowed my sister-in-law and her husband to stay with me a few days, but I absolutely not allowed to have pets in my apartment. Told them this repeatedly. She had a key. I know. Won't make that mistake twice, and I walk into them setting off the fire alarm, cooking. Smoked up the whole house. Dog crap and piss everywhere. Of course I'm the bitch for making them leave. 18 years old. My sister and I were roommates. She's a year and a half older. Had a roommate that moved out suddenly. I wanted some freedom, so I moved in. The apartment we shared had an odd layout. The 2 bedrooms had their own bathrooms, but none accessible through shared living space. Non-verbal rule. If I had company, they used my bathroom. Her company hers. We worked opposite schedules. Hers was afternoon shifts. I worked graveyard. Well, one morning I came in from work. She'd thrown a little gathering. People sleeping on the couch, floor, and a couple spooning on the futon. Being young as we were, no biggie, until I tried my bedroom door and found it locked. Apparently one of her boyfriend's friends had to use the bathroom. Party. I understand the need and urge, but proceeded to pass out in my bed, locking my door to avoid the problems of passing out first. I'm tired. Wanna shower and pass out. Sorry, not sorry. I set off the smoke detector trying to wake him up. Push the test button on the detector. Nope, I up everyone but him. So now everyone is awake and kinda mad, justifiably so, but thankfully at him, not me. We then picked the lock on my room. Using cold water and flour we antiqued him and sent him home covered in ice water and flour. My sister, to get credit, cleaned the mess in my room and laundered my sheets. The inconvenience is kinda worth the tale of revenge. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch together.